When was the last time you were in the flow state? Losing myself by getting into the music it's been my answer for everything. I had no idea why, but it's how I overcame obstacles like shyness and audition anxiety. It's how I found fulfillment in my work, and it's how I learned to lead. Without the flow state, I never would have been able to play my best as the concertmaster of the Central Oregon Symphony. The concertmaster is the lead violinist and second in command to the conductor. So, how does a musician get into the music? Most of us have a hard time explaining it. We say things like, I feel it. It's like I'm singing. It just happens to me. In his book, psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi coined this the flow state. It's an optimal state of mind when we feel our best and we perform our best. And due to its energetic nature, when people are in flow, it inspires and motivates others. We expect musicians, athletes, yogis to be in flow. We expect writers, artists, and revolutionary scientists to be in flow. But according to Csikszentmihalyi, the majority of people getting into their flow state are going through the business of their day-to-day lives. Excuse me. Back when I was in college, I loved playing in orchestras. It was the environment where the music would just sweep me away. And it was the place where all of my hard work, my practicing, and my passion would just magically come to life. So after graduation, I started to take auditions to get into a professional symphony orchestra. And feeling bulletproof with my New York City violin training, I would show up, check in, and make my way to the warm-up room. The commotion would be deafening. All of my competitors would be in there warming up at the same time. So I'd carve out my own little spots, take out my violin, and start doing my warm-ups. And about 45 minutes later, I'd hear somebody say, Diane Allen, next. So I'd leave the noisy warm-up room, step into the hallway, and it would be so quiet that all I could hear is a fuzz in my ears and my heart racing. Walk out on stage up to a solitary music stand, line of judges sitting in a row. That, my friends, is what happens when you play a high-precision instrument with nerves. What a nightmare. I've been seen at my worst. My high skill level, how I just played in the gap in between. I feel like I've been seen in public looking like this. But the fact of the matter is, due to my inability to overcome my audition anxiety meant that I was at a very high risk of living my life with my music trapped inside of me. When it comes to being creative or influential under pressure, what happens to you? In this embarrassing situation, how many people would say, oh, I'll never do that again, and cut off their opportunities? How many people lose confidence? How many people end up feeling bitter and dissatisfied later in life? Well, call me crazy, but even after this public humiliation, I went right back into the arena. I figured, okay, I just need some more experience taking auditions. So after a while, I'd made some headway with my nerves, and I remember this one audition. I was so calm. I felt uninhibited. I was feeling really, really good about myself. How on earth are you going to keep that up? Said my snarky inner critic. That's the sound a violin makes when you get in your own way. Technically, I'm trying to move the string and stop it at the exact same time. It's like driving with the parking brake on. Am I the only one here with a rude inner critic? My first thought was I was having a transition issue going from, let's see. I jumped to the wrong spot. Plan A. Plan A was to get into an orchestra. And at this point, I was well into Plan B. In order to make ends meet, I was scrounging for violin students in a very competitive teaching market. And due to my nerves, not only was I playing in freelance orchestras, but I was sitting last chair. That's like being picked last for dodgeball. So it was a solid 10 years after graduation. And I still was trying to find, a full-time job. And there was this advertisement in a violin magazine that said violin teacher wanted, Central Oregon. And so I sent in my resume. We scheduled the interview, only I had just given birth to our son. I hadn't practiced in weeks, and I was sleep deprived. So I'm at the audition. And from out of the blue, as luck would have it, I find myself going to that place where all of my hard work, my practicing, and my passion just magically come to life. Underneath my fingers, it's like the violin is singing by itself. I'm just so immersed in the music. And the little kiddos that I'm teaching, they're responding really well to my spontaneous creative solutions. In the audience are students, parents, teachers, musicians, and to my surprise, the conductor from the local symphony orchestra. The day-long marathon, it feels like it goes by in 5 minutes. And at the end of the day, they offered me the job on the spot. Back in college, I didn't have a name for it. But clearly being swept by the music was a sure sign that I was getting into my flow state. During my auditions, I would get knocked off my game, but finding my flow was the answer. Whether I was a student or freelancing or teaching and performing in Central Oregon, I had the same talent. I had the same training. I had the same passion. It was in me all along. Finding my flow state was how I could get into that creative state under high pressure and to be influential. It was December 1997 when I was sitting last chair and scrounging for violin students. But January 1998, I was welcomed to Central Oregon with a full roster of violin students waiting for me, and I was hired to sit first chair of the symphony orchestra. What if I were to tell you that the key to tapping into unlimited creativity and finding the energy of influence is something that you already know how to do? Have you ever been so focused in something that you lost complete track of time and you felt one with the activity? Maybe you were at work or cooking or playing tennis, lost in an Excel spreadsheet. How about a brainstorming meeting? Ever have ideas and insights that just come in from out of the blue? And don't you just love it when things come together with a sense of ease? During these kinds of moments, you were in flow. Neuroscientists have discovered that in these moments, hormones are released, creating brainwaves conducive to the flow state. The neocortex amps up, dramatically increasing learning speed, and the prefrontal cortex temporarily shuts down. And this is why we lose a sense of time and a sense of ourselves, key indicators that we are in the flow state. These are the neurobiological conditions that make creativity and outstanding performance readily available. So if we're all wired for this kind of optimal thinking, you might be wondering, well, do I just have to sit around and wait for it to happen? Well, I had to ask myself the same question. As the lead violinist, with hundreds of rock-solid concerts under my belt, success was routine. Getting into my flow state was routine. Getting into the music, it just felt like you walk on stage, you turn on the light, and you could get into it. Except for this one concert. I was giving a pre-concert lecture, turned around, sat down, gave a big cue for the music to start, and I couldn't move. My elbows were frozen. And while it was feeling like an hour, it was really only about a minute for me to regain the full use of my arms. But then there was a disconnect. I wasn't putting any feeling into the music. It was like I forgot how. That can't ever happen again. My first thought was I was having a transition issue, going from speaking to the audience into playing the violin. But it wasn't. It was really about the shift from out of flow into the flow state. I had to find a way to shift into flow and to be able to do it on purpose. So that night, I'm sitting on the couch feeling humiliated, and I am grilling myself with questions. I do get into my flow state in a variety of places. It happens the most on stage. But what am I doing? Well, yes, of course, I'm playing the violin. That's what I'm doing on the outside. What am I doing on the inside? My friends would say, Diane, we're creating the music. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but it feels different for me. More like I'm giving. Actually, I'm sharing. I'm sharing the message of the music, and I'm sharing the experience. Okay, well, then what about those concerts when I moved to tears. It's like that flow state on steroids. It always happens at those audience sing-alongs. Something about a large group of people being combined through the music. Why? Why is that so meaningful? Unity. That's what touches me to the core. The day I couldn't get into the music, all I was thinking was just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. I bet if I had known to focus on sharing and creating unity, I could have gotten into the music. Well, there is nothing like the sting of embarrassment to give you a kick in the pants. And after all of this personal self-reflection, it ended up being a good thing. It's how I discovered my flow strategy. Sharing is how I shift into the flow state on purpose. Unity is how I can shift into it with purpose. So, do you have to wait for a lucky moment to shift into your flow state? Not when you have a flow strategy that you can use to be the best version of yourself. That night, sitting on the couch, trying to figure out if I could get into the flow state on demand, it boiled down to answering 3 questions. And in order for me to answer those questions, I had to recreate memories of times when I was in my flow state. So I want you to recreate the memories of times when you were in yours. And if the flow state is new for you, then you're going to use these same prompts as you observe yourself over the next couple of weeks, looking for a time when you slip into the flow state. The key indicators of being in the flow state are losing a sense of time, losing a sense of yourself, ideas and insights coming in from out of the blue, things coming together with a sense of ease, that heightened creativity. It could be fantasizing or daydreaming. positive feedback loop where the more you get into it, the more you get out of it, and the more you get out of it, the more you get into it. So whether you're recreating a memory of a time when you were in the flow state, or you're looking for a time when you slip into it, I want you to notice, where were you? And where do you get into the flow state the most? With that place in mind, what were you doing? On the outside and on the inside. Now ask, why? Why is it so meaningful? What you do on the inside is your most compelling internal self-motivator. It's how you actively tap into your creativity and your influence. And knowing what you do on the inside means you can now shift into your flow state on purpose. Why it's so meaningful is your most compelling external motivator. And knowing why it's so meaningful means you can now shift into your flow state with purpose. This is your flow strategy. Back when I was a new mom in a new town with a new job, I was scrambling to get my act together. And I remember thinking, wow, well, that worked. So I used my passion to get into the music because that's how I had just found that I could tap into my creativity under pressure and be in my confidence. But then I noticed that the more that I got into the music, the more my students got into the music. The more I got into the music, the more the orchestra got into the music. And the more I got into the music, the more the audience got into the music. According to Stanford researchers who studied the topic of influence, I was experiencing their findings firsthand. Passion is persuasive. And confidence is contagious. In order to understand why this is, and the quickest way to understand it is to take a look at how positive feedback loops function in biology. When an apple is exposed to the gas ethylene, it ripens. But yet when an apple ripens, it itself releases the gas ethylene. So then all of the surrounding apples around it will ripen. And because of this, entire trees will ripen at the same time. Instead of a chain reaction, it's an exponential ripple effect. Did you know that the electromagnetic field of the heart reaches out 15 feet? The brain, 3. These statistics come from the Heart Math Institute. And when we tap into our flow state, both on purpose and with purpose, not only are we engaging all 40,000 neurons in our heart, but we are exuding our energy 15 feet all around us. And like ethylene to apples, the energy that we exude influences exponentially. Imagine a 15-foot circle around me, and all the people in that circle are now expressing their influence in 15-foot circles around them, and now the audience gets looped in. And as we sync up together, we create this synergistic state of group flow. Finding myself by losing myself in the flow state has become my answer to not only leading myself to get into my creativity and being in my confidence under pressure and tapping into that creativity anytime, any place, no matter how high the pressure, but it's also how I've led myself to lead others. Leading on a deep subliminal level through our creativity and our energy is what I like to call silent leadership. And due to its invisible nature, you may never be acknowledged for it. So I want you to notice. I want you to notice when you're with people and they leave inspired and they complain that the time went by way too fast. And that's how you'll know that your energy made that ripple effect and made a difference. And I want you to acknowledge yourself for that. But then I want you to come back to your next Creative Mornings meeting. I want you to acknowledge each other. All you have to do is look someone in the eye, give them 2 fist bumps to the heart and a synergistic burst to indicate that you had an influential flow state moment. And your colleague is going to shower you with praise. When I look at this picture of myself, it does remind me of all of the public embarrassment that I experienced when I was really fighting hard to have a voice through my music and to tap into my creativity under pressure. But on the very same skydiving trip, I experienced peace. And I fully attribute my ability to jump out of an airplane for the first time and enjoy it to all of the years that I've pushed myself to thrive outside of outside of my comfort zone. And the flow state was a big boost in my ability to be able to do that. And I can't tell you what a joy it is to witness the influence on my son Scott. Against all odds, last spring during the pandemic, Scott trained and tested for his commercial pilot's license. And flying for Skydive Awesome is his first paid job as a pilot. He said that one of the funniest things he's ever experienced in life was watching his mother jump out of an airplane. Are you beginning to see the importance of developing a relationship with your flow state? And thinking of it as a practice, it takes practice. And when you can figure out what your flow strategy is, it gives you a framework to say, okay, I'm not feeling it today, but what if I tap into my flow strategy? Can I shift into the flow state on purpose? Maybe you've got a deadline and that deadline is shutting you down. How can you open yourself back up by using your flow strategy? One of the things that I miss the most about these virtual presentations and not being with you in person are the meaningful conversations that we have afterwards. And it's a little weird to do that on Zoom. We're going to do some Q&A now, but it's a little weird to do that on Zoom when everybody else is listening. So I'm going to put in the chat, this is a Google form, and it's just a way for you to reach out to me and to ask me your questions and to share with me your thoughts and insights. And I promise I'm going to reply to you. And I have some gifts that I will send you as well if you want to go to this form and share some information with me about what you got out of this and what are you looking for. And so I have an MP3 of my music. I have a worksheet for discovering your flow strategy. And I also have some inspirational things that I'd love to gift to you. So, understanding your flow strategy and using it as a tool, it's liberating. And by repurposing how you get into the flow state, that means that you could take your best self with you anywhere. Every one of us is wired for this. Discovering your flow strategy will give you the gift to shift. So you can get into your life like a musician gets into the music and tap into your creativity in an unlimited way and to project your influence exponentially. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank
Can we open it up to questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, I have one real quick, and then if anybody else has questions, they can unmute themselves and jump in, or feel free to put it in the chat. But how did you start kind of silencing your inner critic, or changing that 15-foot area of other people's maybe not so positive mood set? Like how did you keep it inward?
I have a story for that. You know, the when you're in the flow state, when that prefrontal cortex shuts down, your inner critic goes away. It's gone. That's where it lives. And so it's interesting because, you know, if you think about it's literally a brain pattern where some things are getting highlighted, some things are getting shut down. And so, you know, this is an example is this is a few years ago. I was at this park and these two girls fell into an ice pond. It was snowy and the pond was icy and they fell in. And there was only two of us that were willing to go out on the ice to rescue them. And so I was in this like really weird state. I know I was running as fast as I could, but it felt like it was slow. And then the little girl, I'm carrying her off the ice. And as I was handing her off to some people, I couldn't hear them. It was the weirdest thing. So the reason why I talk about this extreme state, which I was in, was that my body naturally turned some things on, turned some things off, and set me up to rise to this occasion. And that's what the flow state does. Literally, it turns off the inner critic when you're so immersed in it. Now, with regards to influencing, I have a cousin who's incredibly negative. It's just like, and she will just talk and talk and talk. As long as she has an ear, she will just. And so I remember it was a family reunion and I knew this was going to happen. And I was like, I am not going to even like go into this with her. And so what I did is I listened. I got into that space and I smiled. And I just kept looking at her and I went like this. And my goal, I actually had a little secret goal. I was like, I'm going to make her smile. And it took about 5 minutes, but she got to this point where she just couldn't talk about the drama in her life. Like she was just like, and she started to smile a little bit. And then she said, oh, it was so nice talking with you. All I was doing was listening, because she's just one of those people that dominates, right? Yeah, so I did it on purpose. And you know, the thing is that when you're leading an orchestra, you can't stop the music and say, hey, you got to do this. So it all had to be done energetically, all of it. So just the sheer number of concerts that I've played, it's that, like I'm telling you, this is a very well rehearsed thing. And so it is a practice. And so the more you get into it, the more you can get into it. Does that make sense? It's like you get used to it. I did 7-hour training this week with school administrators in Nevada. And they just felt so grateful for this information, because as students are coming back from virtual learning into the classroom, they wanted to create a culture as fast as they could. And so this idea of leading, being the example, and enrolling students into their flow state was like just the the refueling that we all need, right? It's very when I'll say one more thing, burnout happens when you pour yourself into something and it doesn't feed back to you. When you're in the flow state, you're in that positive feedback loop, so it's feeding back to you. And that's how we can do hours of work, and then like last night I couldn't sleep because I was just so excited working with these administrators. Anybody else have a question?
Katie had a couple of questions. Do you have any practices you use to tap into your flow state when you're especially struggling, like a mantra, a particular song, imagery?
So I had mentioned the Heart Math, that's MATH Institute. I'll put that in the chat. And I did their level 1 training. They have a meditation, which I'll show you right now. And I use this all the time. So you could do this with your eyes open or closed. But the first step is just to put your hands on your heart. And now breathe as if your heart is a third lung. And their third step is to recreate a memory of a time when you had intense gratitude or you felt intense love. Like, just recreate that memory on purpose. And so for me, it would be the first time I held my son. I mean, the gratitude and the love, just wow. So remembering a time when you had a really intense experience like that, and notice you're not feeling that in between your ears. You're feeling it in your heart. Now I add my own step, which is now think of you in your flow strategy and what that feels like. And how does that feel in your heart? And that's it. So the steps are: you put your hands on your heart, you breathe as if your heart's a third lung, and then you recreate memories of times when you were in your heart space, whether it was through your creativity or if you want to grab onto some other memory. Jake's like, I'm staying here. I'm not leaving this. Any other questions?
Have you found your flow state outside of music?
Oh, yeah. I was at so I retired from the symphony after 15 years, and I was exploring a career change, and I was at this networking event because that's what we have to do when we're changing career. Oh my goodness, I was just so awkward. I had no idea how to manage myself at this networking event. I was just like, blah. And then, people stand in circles and then you're trying to break into the conversations. Oh my gosh. And I left, went into the bathroom to collect myself, and I had a little flow state moment because one thing that I didn't get to talk about earlier is that the flow state exists at the intersection of skill and challenge. And so I was in a challenging environment. It's when you rise to the occasion. So some people, a deadline is what does that for them. Some people, a deadline kills it for them. But anyways, a deadline is an idea of a challenge. In this case, I was feeling really awkward, and it's based on your reputation, how you're showing up in public. So I was just like, that was challenging for me. And so I realized, wait a minute, aren't these conversations, networking, an opportunity for me to share? And aren't new connections unifying? And literally in the next conversation, I tapped into my flow strategy, which was very well rehearsed through the violin. And I was like sharing with the same passion as I play the violin. It was really trippy, but it worked. So when I'm writing music, I have a different flow strategy. It's on the inside, I'm problem solving. And why it's so meaningful is that it's, expression, it's freedom of speech, basically.
Okay, there's another one from Jake. It says, have you ever found that there is an upper limit to how long one can stay in their flow state? And if you feel yourself coming out of your flow, how can you get yourself back into it quickly?
You know what? It's another thing with practice. Everything about being a violinist is sustained focus. And we would play 2.5 hour concerts. We play symphonies that were, an hour long in itself. So I think that in my case, it was kind of built in to, being a musician. And so that, the I don't know if I would call it an upper limit, but just practice again. I guess that's what I'm thinking. And then how do you get back onto it? Your flow strategy. Just apply it. And then you might just need to like stop and go for a walk, have a bite to eat, take a break, get back into it. The number one killer of the flow state is interruptions. And so, how do you create an interruption free zone? Yeah, like that's a thing, right? But there's certain companies that have rules, things like you have to answer an email within an hour, and to me that's incredibly disruptive. You should batch that kind of thing, and that's typically how I work, is where I batch. Like, I'm going to do only creative stuff for 2 or 3 hours. Okay, now I'm going to do the administrative left brain stuff. um yeah, did that help, Jake? Okay, thank you, Alyssa. So, if you want to, thank you for posting my links. I super appreciate it. I do have a lot of content on my Instagram, and I have, and thanks for posting my TED Talk link. Feel free to share it. Need to get views on there. And then if you just want to, chat further, go ahead and fill out the Google form, and I have those goodies to send for you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Can you play one little piece of music by chance for us, just to have a little high note? Or maybe just your kind of tune that you get into your flow state with, or just a few seconds, if that's not asking too much.
Oh, not at all. I have no, I have another one. It's a little more contemplative, but I still think it's a good one to leave with. So thank you all again for having me. And here we go. I wonder, let's see. I don't know if I erased the previous one. Let's find out.